3 sharp knocks echoed in the quiet hallway. Nadia stood outside apartment 4B, holding a plate of sweets, her heart beating in a steady rhythm. She was entirely convinced her husband, Kamran, was letting his imagination run wild. The lock turned and the door swung wide. Nadia opened her mouth to say, "Assalamu alaikum, Mrs. Ali," but the greeting died in her throat. Mrs. Ali wasn't standing there. In fact, none of the Alis were anywhere to be found. The familiar faces of the family she knew were completely absent from the space. Instead, a woman named Shazia stood in the doorway. Behind her, Tariq occupied the living room, and 3 unfamiliar children sat quietly at the dining table. It was the exact family Kamran had described, matching his account down to the final detail. Nadia felt the ground beneath her feet turn to ice. Staring at the unfamiliar children who were supposed to be Ryan, Zayn, and Sarah, her breath caught. For 2 seconds, she simply stood there, frozen by the impossibility of what she was seeing. Nadia forced her racing heart down and swallowed the lump of panic in her throat. She tightly gripped the edges of the plate to hide her shaking hands, and managed to pull her face into a tight, strained smile. She stammered out an apology, claiming she had stepped off on the wrong floor and knocked on the wrong door. Shazia offered a calm, polite dismissal, and the moment the door clicked shut, Nadia turned on her heel and practically flew down the hallway. She slammed her own front door shut and threw the deadbolt. A simple, neighborly check on a friend had instantly turned a safe, familiar building into the center point of an impossible disappearance. Nadia slid down against her locked door, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Kamran was waiting in the living room. Seeing her pale face, he didn't even need to ask. She confirmed the terrifying truth. He wasn't crazy. The exact family he saw was in there. To understand the logistical constraints of this disappearance, we have to look at the timeline. Kamran and Nadia physically interacted with the Ali family exactly 48 hours ago. Within that narrow window, a family of 5 would have had to pack up all their belongings, coordinate movers, and completely vacate the premises. Doing this in total secrecy, without a single neighbor noticing a moving truck or hearing heavy furniture in the hall, is a physical impossibility. And that only covers the exit. In that exact same block of time, a completely different family of 5 would need to move their own furniture, their own clothes, and their entire lives into the exact same unit, again without creating a sound. The math of a standard move doesn't hold up. A typical eviction or a voluntary relocation cannot account for a silent, total turnover of 10 people and 2 households in just 2 days. The logistical timeline is broken, but the physical reality inside apartment 4B is even more concerning. The brief glimpse Nadia had through the open door revealed an entirely new set of furniture and clothing. Every physical trace that the Ali family had ever inhabited that space was already gone. Then there is the psychological state of the cons. When Shazia answered the door, her demeanor was polite, calm, and deeply relaxed. If a family had just finished a frantic, secret move, the apartment would be a maze of cardboard boxes, and the parents would be exhausted. Instead, the cons were sitting down to a quiet dinner, showing no signs of the stress associated with a 48-hour move-in. The cons aren't acting like people who just rushed into a new apartment. They are flawlessly executing the social roles and habits of residents who have lived there for years. Back in their living room, Nadia and Kamran's initial shock began to settle into a heavy exhaustion. As they sat together on the sofa, they started to process the logic of what they had just witnessed. Kamran pointed out a crucial detail. The Alis were known to be gentle, kind, and highly stable people. They were good neighbors who had built a comfortable, predictable routine in the building. That specific history contradicts the idea of a sudden, secret escape. A stable family of 5 does not voluntarily vanish into thin air without a word to their closest friends. If the Alis didn't leave by choice, the alternative is deeply alarming. They were removed from their home against their will, and they are likely in grave danger. The evidence points toward a highly coordinated, hostile extraction of an entire family. The most isolating part of this discovery is that Nadia and Kamran are the only 2 people left who remember the truth. To the rest of the building, the Alis have been subjected to a total social erasure. The directory shows the name Khan. The new occupants act as if they own the space. In this fabricated reality, The Ollies never even existed. Nadia looked at Kamran, her fear replaced by a spark of resolve. They were the only ones who knew the Ollies were gone, and they realized they could not just sit in their apartment and do nothing. Their mandate was clear, even if the path forward wasn't. They had to find a way to track down and save a family that the rest of the world had already forgotten.